getting comfortable with the idea of your money going into an account that's not your checking account. Like so many people get like possessive. If it's not in their checking account, they can't touch it. So no, you can non-retirement investment accounts are great.
Yeah.
You can use, if you don't need, if you can pull the money out. I think about this episode as like the work smarter, not harder episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like how do you, there's so many things that people over obsess on in their financial picture. And I think as advisors, it's important to try to help people kind of accomplish the 95% before they worry about the extra 5%.
Exactly. Yeah. So people tend to obsess about things. What I find is this. You'll find some like financial influencer that'll talk about a certain thing and it'll trend. And then everybody's like, well, I got to take care of that. Here's a good example of this. I follow a guy named Andrew Huberman with Huberman Labs. Great guy. I love his content. But if you pay too much attention to his content, you'll start to get like really concerned about your health and longevity because you're like, I'm not doing any of this stuff. Like every morning, he wants me to wake up at 6 a.m., take my shirt off, walk outside and just bask in the sunshine. So I'm not going to do that, Andrew. I'm not, and if you follow his...
While you get your 4 kids ready for school.
Exactly. It's like so unrealistic. And if you obsess over the Huberman protocols, your whole life is going to be nothing but protocols, health protocols. And at what point can you just like give up and say, you know what, I'm just going to do these few things because I can do that, and I'm not going to worry about the rest. And that that's kind of the financial discussion we're going to have today.
But we talked about this last episode, which is like, what are the wealthiest people doing? And this is the big thing: is longevity. Basically, how do you spend your money to live a longer life? But that's another episode. Go check out the last podcast.
Well, as we like to do from time to time, really the past 4 episodes, I think we've picked on SpaceX stock. We told everybody, don't get over anxious.
Be careful beating your chest on stuff like that. You're right until you're wrong.
True. Yeah, but as is typical with most IPOs, you've got a lot of volatility that occurs after the IPO. So speaking of obsession, getting obsessed about participating in the IPO and participating in the fervor of the moment sometimes backfires, and that is a lot of times that's true for IPO participation. And here we are, SpaceX stock is trading roughly 15% below its IPO price. So if you didn't get a chance to get on it, now's the time. Apparently, according to
not a recommendation.
According to Yahoo Finance, 30 senators, including one Democrat, just purchased SpaceX stock.
Buying this thing.
Yeah. So there was like that guy. I forget I think it's more than a guy. It's a whole team that is behind the Twitter account Unusual Whales. They got their start tracking the portfolios of politicians. Yeah. Like the Pelosi tracker was one of their things. That was one of their claims to fame. So, politician trades you can track, and apparently I guess 30 of them have bought SpaceX. So now's the time to, I guess any time really, is the time to get into it if you want to get into it. But
I'd say our bottom line is like, part of our job as advisors is about limiting the noise, right? I think a lot of times people think that we're supposed to come up with like more ideas, like just give you more ideas in addition to the ideas that you already have. And I think, and this will go really hand in hand with what we talk about in the podcast today, a lot of times our job is about helping people stay focused, helping people streamline things and manage their behaviors, and ultimately build their financial position and drive their wealth through factors that they can control as opposed to things they can't control.
Yep.
Like whether or not SpaceX is going to be a great buy at the IPO.
Yep. All right, next in news is FOMC is starting their 3-day meeting. So, and the rate decision is expected tomorrow. So we're recording today. What is today? July 28th. So the rate decision is expected to come out tomorrow. Right now, the poly market is predicting a 79% chance of no change, which I tend to agree with. So I think it's the most politically popular decision. Obviously, the Trump administration wants rate cuts, but realistically, the inflation environment can't support that. So I think that now you were mentioning before the show that there was some rumors, and I guess that's where this 20% odds comes from of a rate hike. So nobody's expecting a rate cut.
Yeah, I mean,
actually, a small percentage.
Look, we've got a new Fed chair.
Yeah.
I mean, Warsh is new to this position. He's 2 months in. He hasn't given a lot of direction as to what he's going to do. So I think right now, part of this market volatility is just trying to discount like an unknown Fed. And I'm kind of in your camp. I don't think they're going to raise rates. But the inflation picture is making that hard. Now, we just last week got a really positive inflation print. Actually, it looks like in year-over-year inflation, which had a 4 handle on it, is now 3.5%.
Yes.
It was actually between May and June, we had the biggest 1-month drop in CPI since 2020.
Yeah, I've noticed that a little bit just in fuel prices. Obviously, have come down a little bit. There was a lot of panic around $150 barrel oil, which is never going to happen. It doesn't seem. So and you were mentioning you were shopping for something at Costco, and you actually saw a price discount, price decreases.
Yeah, well, actually, if within the last month or so, Walmart came out and announced that they're dropping a bunch of prices in their warehouses. And I was shopping at Costco, as I like to do, and I don't know why I'm just price sensitive to certain things that I buy regularly. And one of the things that I buy regularly, it is the bane of my existence, is this water softener salt. Do you have to buy the water softener salt?
So I don't. I'm not going to go into the story, but I don't have to.
Do you have soft water?
I do. So the municipality I live in is one of the perks of why we bought the house we did. They soften the water at the actual,
oh my gosh,
wherever it comes from, the water tank.
Jeez.
Yeah. So our water already through the municipal lines is softened.
Okay. Well, I don't have the luxury of living in that municipality. So I have a water softener at my house, and I have to buy, like every time I go to Costco, I have to buy one of these 50-pound bags
I'm
of
familiar.
salt.
Yeah.
And then I have to figure out how to lug them into my basement.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm price sensitive to these things because I buy them regularly. I know what they price. So recently, they had gone, last year I was buying them for $6.79 or so. This year they were up in the mid 7s. But as of last time I went and bought them, they're actually down in the 6s. So I'm sure that's anecdotal, but it seems like Walmart's announcement that they're going to lower some of these prices. I just wonder how long some of this takes to show up in some of the data. For whatever it's worth, I took a look at the year-over-year rate of change of the different pieces, the components of the CPI. Some of the things that I thought were notable is that used cars and trucks are actually down in price, almost 2% year over year. Medical care commodities are down. The things that are up the most, gasoline and airfares
are up.
26%, 26.7% for gasoline.
You're talking year over year.
Year over year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And 26.5% for airfares. So really, I know we beat this war in Iran up every time we talk, but it's like if gasoline prices would calm down a little bit, you could see a world where inflation is more. And I think this is back to the Fed. I think this is Warsh's point, is that like, I don't want to use the word transitory because it's such a dirty word nowadays.
That one.
But like, some of the factors that are driving inflation, I don't want to say that you would hope they're temporary, but they're like somewhat man-made.
Yeah.
Right? And what man maketh, man can generally taketh away. So you hope that at some point we get some resolution on some of this conflict and something happens that, brings the price of gasoline down, or at least makes it go up, because a year from now, if gas hasn't changed in price, we have 0% year-over-year inflation in gas.
Here's another thing I'll say, and then we got to move on to the next story. I think we put too much emphasis on fuel prices in terms of gasoline. Where gasoline really impacts the CPI is not necessarily you directly filling your tank, because if you do the math on it, it's not that large of a percentage of the median wage going into your fuel tank. It just isn't.
Sure.
So if you save like $1 per gallon, it seems like a lot because it's very salient, but the reality is it doesn't really help you that much in terms of your monthly budget. Where it translates is in transportation. Everything drives on a truck and a ship. That's where the fuel price or oil price kind of finds its way into the inflation numbers.
It squeezes margins of all the companies in the chain, right?
Yep.
And so ultimately it puts either pressure on margins or upward pressure on prices. So Anyway, the bottom line is Fed announces their interest rate decision the next day, I think tomorrow, and we'll see what they do.
Well, poly markets are betting this is where I put my money, but I think no change is the more likely outcome.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
In other news, Apple's back on top. So, Apple, which used to be, I don't know when they got supplanted, but they used to be the largest company in S&P 500.
It got like supplanted by Microsoft, if you remember, like
That's
a couple
right.
of years ago.
It did, and then Microsoft fell off. Yeah,
and then Microsoft's down, a whole bunch since the peak, and then Nvidia was the biggest one for a while, and now. And ironically, it's within the last couple of weeks that Apple announced price increases on the new iPhone, and phones actually aren't doing so hot right now.
Yep.
Because of the chips and all of this other stuff, right?
Yep.
But what did you say? Apple hit $5 trillion in market cap.
Apple and Nvidia are the only two companies to have achieved a $5 trillion market cap. Now it touched $5 trillion and came back down, but Apple is the largest company in the world again, so we'll see how long that lasts.
That means if you take the price of the shares of Apple times the number of shares, it's $5 trillion.
Which is kind of funny because what's Apple's AI strategy?
Use other people's?
Exactly. So it kind of
that was like a bad thing till it was a good thing, I guess.
Yes. Apple was a hated stock because they're like, they're not doing anything with AI. And then, Apple's like, but we'll just piggyback on OpenAI.
Yeah.
We'll do their thing.
Now the hyperscalers are funding everybody else's earnings.
Yeah. Well, supposedly Apple computers are highly sought after. The Mac stations. I don't know, what do you call the actual desktops of the Mac stations, whatever they're called. Those things are highly sought after for running like localized models because apparently they're pretty good at processing these things. This is way above my head. I don't even know why I'm talking about it.
But back to my point of the hyperscalers funding everybody, what about Google's earnings last week?
Yeah, Alphabet's earnings were very strong, but for the first time in history, in Alphabet's history, they have a negative net cash flow, which is, largely explained by their investment in AI. So Google's making a big bet on Gemini. And, let's just go to google.com real quick. I don't even know if google.com, when's the last time you've gone to google.com?
Well, I just type it in the search bar.
Yeah, so it looks like they got this little AI mode, and I imagine this is fully integrated. And so this is essentially, so when I click on AI mode, it basically changes it to Gemini. So that's pretty slick. But the problem with that is Gemini doesn't really have the same ad revenue embedded in it. So I think they're going to figure it out. Alphabet is full of a bunch of really smart people. But, Google search is profitable because of the embedded ads. Yeah. And if you winnow the embedded ads, then that's going to be problematic.
Well, just to give some numbers to this, Google was expected last week to release earnings of $2.88 per share. They ended up releasing earnings of $9.11 per share, which accounted
for... That's a blowout.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge. But the big kind of eyesore in it was that I guess they had a gain of $98 billion due to unrealized gains on equity securities. So they've got, essentially Google owns a bunch of stock that's up $98 billion that impacted their earnings. Had you backed that out of their earnings, instead of earning $9.11 per share, their earnings would have been $2.85 a share.
Which is pretty much on target.
target. Yeah. So, but like we've been talking about, so many of these big AI hyperscalers are spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that money's ending up in the pocket of other companies.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The pockets.
And whether or not this pans out and helps their bottom line over time is yet to be seen. And my bet is Alphabet is probably going to figure out before these other direct-to-consumer frontier models, OpenAI, Claude being another one, Anthropic's Claude, they have to figure out a revenue model because all of them are burning cash. I think Anthropic is the closest currently because they've kind of focused on this like coding route. So they said we're going to be hyper focused on coding and we're going to help our users be profitable in this area. And then they also charge a per token use for it. So I pay for Claude. themselves. I don't know which subscription I do. I read a tweet once. It was kind of funny. It says, your cost for Claude is either $250 a year, $1,200 a year, $10,000 a year, or $2 billion a year. Yeah, those are the tiers. So, that's kind of true when it comes to Claude. It's like it kind of scales up really quick. But the point is you have to like pay for use, whereas a lot of these like OpenAI, Grok to some extent, pardon me, and even Google's Gemini, it's more like free to use. And I think that the angle that they're using, and I know OpenAI has Codex and all this other stuff, but that you have to pay to use. But for for largely, like I'd say 95% of the users use the free stuff. And how do you monetize that? And I can imagine you're going to have to figure out how to embed ads.
Yeah,
and I think Alphabet knows how to do that because they've been doing it in the Google search product and Gmail product for years. So we'll probably see.
Let's be real. It knows all your deepest, darkest secrets. They're just going to sell your data.
They don't even need to sell it. Well, yeah, they just use the data themselves to sell advertising. So people basically buy advertising through Google. They don't even need to sell your data per se. They just need to sell the idea that, hey, we know the deepest, darkest secrets, so your targeted ads are better through us.
Right.
So they don't even need to farm out your data. It's still internally. They just basically sell using their data set, they sell the promise of hyper-focused advertising. And honestly, they probably do because, there's a lot of money that goes into YouTube advertising. Well, let's
get to the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, let's talk about the meat and potatoes. So today we're going to talk about 4, maybe 5. It depends on how long we go. You and I like to talk. So we're going to talk about 5 or 4. We'll make it 4. The commitment to be 4 behaviors that people hyper focus on when they should be focusing on something else. So hyper focusing on budgeting versus just doing what you call the reverse budget.
Yeah, and there's multiple versions of reverse budgets. Like there's ways to do it depending on who you are and how your inflows are structured. But it's so important, I think, to set up a process that controls how much money ends up in your spending account, so that over time, when you're asked or when you try to reflect on, well, how much money do I spend, as opposed to adding things up, you can actually kind of answer the question by understanding how much money is showing up in your checking account. Like the easiest example that I can give you here is a retiree that lives 100% off of their portfolio.
Yeah.
If they're spending it, it's coming out of their investment account. And so I can go, I have clients like this. They're people that are retired. They've been retired for a period of time. And I know exactly how much Social Security they bring in every month. And then everything else comes out of their portfolio. And so if I've worked with this client for 3 to 5 years, I can actually pull 3 to 5 years of data that just shows how much money have they withdrawn over that time. And all I have to do to figure out their expenses is add up how much they've withdrawn with how much Social Security they get. And I know how much they're spending. And it's just, so there are multiple ways to set up these processes. Just to give the listeners some tangible things, I have several clients where the way that we do this is their investment account serves as the deposit or the repository for all their paychecks. So they might have an investment account that has, let's just say $100,000+ in it, and their paychecks might be uneven for whatever reason. And instead of having their paychecks go to their checking account and then they periodically might send money over to the investment account, what we'll actually do is we'll have the paychecks sent to the investment account and then have the investment account pay a one-time monthly deposit to the checking account. And what we can do is we can have that monthly deposit be fixed. So let's say the person thinks they spend $10,000 a month and their average paycheck is 10 to 13, whatever it is. But some paychecks are too small. Some paychecks are a lot bigger. If we just have the investment account pay $10,000 a month over to the checking account, and every month the paychecks show up in the investment account, the months where there's not enough money from the paycheck, there's enough money there to cover it. So you get even cash flows in your checking account. And then in the months where there's more money rolling through your paycheck, by default, you're saving the extra. And if I, as your advisor, you want to understand your spending, all I really have to do is say, well, I've been sending you $10,000 a month for the last year. How's that been going?
Yeah.
And if there's money left over,
then you know it's right.
Yeah, exactly. Because how many financial plans do you think? I mean, I worked at Fidelity for years. I took, I think, like 40,000 phone calls of people around the country calling and asking, how do I retire? And I built a lot of retirement projections in that time. And every single time you didn't know these people. They're just calling in, and it's like your first time talking to them, and they're like, hey, I want to retire, put me together, can I do it? And so you get in this fancy calculator and you pull up the expenses and you say, do you know how much money you spend? And inevitably you hear their eyes roll into their head and they start counting like, well, I paid off my house, so now I have a mortgage, I have utility bills, I have food. And so inevitably they get to you and they're like, well, I spend $4,000 a month.
Yeah. And it's never right.
And I can run you a financial plan at $4,000 a month. It might tell you you're great. Who knows if it's right? So what I try to do is set up some kind of system where the money that's showing up in somebody's checking account is a fixed number. Because let's be real, nobody works well when you get a bunch of money in your checking account one month and no money the next month. And it's too unpredictable.
The curse of commission.
It's too unpredictable. So you have to create some level of predictability and stability in your checking, and then create a system so that if you ever, because guess what? The goal isn't to say, hey, here's your budget, hope you make it work. It's just to create a system so that you can be aware. If let's use my example of the $10,000 a month. If you start taking $10,000 a month and it's not enough, guess what? You can change it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think there's so much to be said for just getting comfortable with the idea of your money going into an account that's not your checking account. So many people get possessive. If it's not in their checking account, they can't touch it. It's like, no, you can non-retirement investment accounts are great.
Yeah.
You can use, if you don't need, if you can pull the money out.
Yeah. I love the idea of paying yourself a fixed amount from your paycheck. You mentioned $10,000. It could be whatever it is, a month, or however much it costs you to live. And then if you have a variable income, which I think most people do, to some sense, even government positions, they get annual bonuses and whatnot. So everybody's income. No, I shouldn't say everybody. I'd say probably 80% of the people I work with, they have variable incomes to some degree. Some are wildly variable, like if you're a real estate professional, realtor. That can be, it's feast or famine.
Sure.
Same goes with anybody on commission. But the idea of going into your payroll provider, your payroll portal, and saying, okay, this fixed amount goes to my checking account every month, and then any overage goes over here, is really that is the definition of paying yourself first. That's all it is. That's all it means.
Let's just take your example of being a realtor. Let's say some months you get zero, and that's why I suggest you could have the investment account. All of it goes there, is just because, well, what if some months your paycheck doesn't cover?
Yeah.
I mean, I have plenty of people I work with where their commissions, they're in sales, and their commissions, might be 2/3 of their pay. I mean, what are we going to do? Not live on 20% of their income or something, right? We're using that for spending, but some months it might be nothing. Other months it might not be, or it might be a lot. And it does become hard in those situations to just send the first so much of your paycheck to your checking account and then all remaining. And so that's where I get around to have a big enough investment account. I call it the pay account, if that makes sense, and pay all the entirety of the paycheck into that account, and then send out a fixed amount from that account to the checking account, and just make sure you've got a process to manage the liquidity.
I see what you're saying. So it's possible that there's more than one way.
There's different variations on this. So take your personal situation, and just think about how do you create a system so that you don't have to add your expenses up to tell me what your expenses are.
Yeah. I'm going to make a confession here. I've done budgeting. I've done the budgeting apps, YNAB, EveryDollar, all this. I find them to be unsustainable for me. I cannot keep on top of them. They're a pain in my butt, and I frankly don't get any value out of them, because when when it matters is when I'm at Costco or Micro Center and I'm looking at, okay, should I buy the $500 monitor, which is the one I want, or should I buy the $250 monitor? I'm not pulling up YNAB saying, what does YNAB tell me?
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. Now, maybe for some people, they do matter.
If you have a budget problem, I think then there's different exercises to do. And it's not about totaling up your expenses. It's about taking a look at where your money is going and really trying to prioritize and understand if you're spending money on things that are aligned with your values, and just being ruthless about kicking things out that are getting your resources that aren't worth your attention.
Or just not using. So I think what's useful is every year, maybe every other year, doesn't have to be that frequent, going through all the stuff that you're spending. I have to every year, just as a function of the way I do my accounting in my household.
You got to do your taxes.
Yeah, that's actually the main reason for that. But and then I go through and I reassess. Okay, should I be spending my money on this or should I not? And that's the budgeting. I do the reverse budgeting, and I've done it naturally. Frankly, I find like 95% of people out there do it. But the main message we're trying to send out there is, if you feel guilt, if you're not doing like nickel and dime budgeting and you're like, oh my God, I got to be doing that. I'm so irresponsible because I'm not doing that. Don't worry. Most people don't. And if you are someone who is doing it and you're obsessing about it and it's stressing you out, good news is you don't have to. There's this concept of reverse budgeting that we'd strongly encourage you to look into. Just hit the rewind button and listen to what you just said. So I think we should move on to the next one, number 2, and that's and it kind of relates to the first one. That is, behaviors matter more than fees do, or investment returns.
Yeah, we're biased, right? Because we charge for investment advice.
Yeah, but I sleep very well at night knowing that I'm worth the money. So I don't for one second think that my clients are being disadvantaged, and I feel the same for the clients of most good advisors. Now there are some people out there that I'm like, you're kind of getting ripped off, but that's few and far between. The fact is, and this goes for investment fees, but it also goes for returns too. So there's this, one of my friends showed me this new system out there called Autopilot. Have you seen this?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm not going to really plug it too hard, but it's like an investment program. It's an app you can download, and you can follow. You can basically have another retail trader that publishes their trades on Autopilot, managing your portfolio. Now, what do you think happens? What do you think people are doing?
Chasing returns.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're saying, user 64589, Molly has 50% annualized returns. I'm going to subscribe to that, and then before you know it, and maybe your account does good for a while, but anyway,
yeah, it's like picking active managers.
I get why people do this. Like everybody wants easy money. Like, come on. Who wouldn't? If you see a ripe apple hanging low from a tree, who's not going to go and pick it? It's the humans are designed to do that. We're engineered to make things easy for ourselves. That's like our nature. But we can obsess over it. So if you obsess over your returns, you're going to use that as a crutch to not save. You still have to save. We actually did some math. Did you want to go over the math on this?
Well, there are a few key moments in your life. Okay, like everybody that we've talked to, if you kind of distill down their financial plan, you'll notice that like a lot of people's success or not in life boils down to like a handful of key moments. Yeah. Right? And one that comes up a lot over, the last 20 years is like how people handled 2008. Mm-hmm. Okay, like if you go to two people that had handled, one person freaked out or got nervous, or 2020. I mean, you could pick any downturn. You could also pick upswings, right? Because there are on the other side of getting wiped out when the market goes down by making boneheaded decisions. There are people that when the market goes up, over lever and get boneheaded on the other side. So the fact is, in your life, there could be a couple of key decisions that drive like 80% of your outcomes, right? And I think one of the important parts of having an advisor is to try to remove or reduce a lot of the emotion from those decisions, because I don't care who you are. When you are in the middle of watching your money take a 40 to 50% hit, potentially losing a job, and having all the other normal stressors in life going on, like you don't, and I'm not trying to be accusatory. I'm like, we're all somewhat rational, but like those are crisis moments. Like your lizard brain kicks in those moments, and you're kind of wired to say like, get me out. And there's some people that
it's not limited to crisis moments. Even I had a conversation last week with someone who had a $5,000 Roth IRA. Which is, they basically made one contribution and forgot about it. And they looked at that. I'm not going to go into, give any more, it's going to be general. So they looked at that as an insignificant balance. And they said to me, I'm going to cash that in. I don't even like worrying about it. I don't even like working, and I had to go through this long, by the way, I couldn't convince them. It was a failure. I still feel bad about it. They had it in their minds that they wanted to go and spend it. They wanted it. That was their vacation money. And so they cashed a Roth contribution that they made. By the way, it had doubled in value.
Yeah.
And I just said, contribute to it. It's going to, it's doing well. All you have to do is contribute to it.
No,
so
thanks.
it's just small little, and most people, when I show them the numbers, they will respond to it positively. They're like, yeah, you know what? You're right. And I'd say it's like 75% of the time, we can get people to make that right decision. This particular example, it was kind of an insignificant portion of their overall portfolio, so they just couldn't, get past it. But, it doesn't necessarily need to be a crisis moment is my point.
Sure.
It can be like, hey, there's a temptation over here and I want to, cash in something that's working and apply to something that is just going to scratch a consumer itch for the moment.
And I would also argue that like people that have advisors, like there's almost a self-image that you start to create if you have a financial advisor that you're responsible with money. And so I think on average you start, at least what I've noticed I've taken people that until they worked with me as their advisor, they hadn't saved much money and they were kind of paycheck to paycheck, and then all of a sudden they're hiring me as the advisor and they're putting away a few $1,000s a month all of a sudden because they like have an outlet to invest. So I think there's situations like that. I'll tell you a good story though about a crisis moment. Just because again, I'm not, obviously people have control over their own actions. I'm not saying everybody's going to make some boneheaded choice, but this was a real story. I took a phone call in 2014, maybe 2015. It was right after oil had gone down. So this is why I have a hard time talking about oil and inflation. I like oil is less expensive today than it was when I was in my like early 20s.
Yeah.
But in 2013, we had a big crisis in oil. Oil went down to like $40 a barrel. At the time, we handled like the big oil companies' 401k plans. So I was talking to, Chevron employees and Exxon employees, all this stuff. And these people were making buku bucks. They would work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off on like a rig offshore, and they were making $300,000, $400,000 a year to like work the oil rigs. And in the oil crash, a lot of these people lost their jobs. I remember taking a phone call where I talked to a manager and he said, yeah, I've got a list of like 500 people to lay off. And then he said, do you want to know who the last person I've got to lay off is? Himself.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the midst of taking, it was just so weird because for like a year or two, we took phone calls where like everybody was just killing it in the energy space. And then for the next 2 years, I took a lot of really depressing phone calls of people like losing their jobs and losing big incomes. And so I remember this one in particular. This guy was in his early 40s. He had saved, I'm using rough numbers, let's say about $800,000 in his 401k plan. And he had just lost his job working in the energy field, and he's going to become a commercial fisherman now. So he's going from like $300,000-$400,000 a year to maybe 60.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 houses, a boat, 3 cars, all of which have some level of debt.
Yeah, he's levered up.
So in his mind, he can't afford those payments on $60,000 a year. So he calls Fidelity, me, and says, I want to cash out my whole 401k plan. And without getting into all the details, basically 401ks, when they're cashed out, it's taxable in the year it's cashed out. There's a penalty on top of that.
He'd be looking at no less than like 40% loss.
Well, the government was going to look at him this year. If he cashed out $800,000 and made $100, the government was going to tax him like he made $900,000, which is pretty high tax rates and a 10% penalty.
Yeah. I
know they were all in Texas. A lot of these people were in Texas, so no state taxes, which I guess was good. But yeah, we're talking like he was probably giving up 40% of this money. I mean, on $800,000, it's like $320,000.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
I remember I had 3 separate phone calls with him and his wife, and I was basically pleading with them to just like take the money and take like whatever your bills cost every month, just take that amount of money out every month.
Yeah.
Cash out the bit that you need as you need it, and don't pay income tax on all $900,000 all at once. And do you know what they did?
I'm guessing he cashed it out.
He cashed out all $800,000. I will never know what happened to that guy.
Yeah.
I wonder all the time what ended up happening to that. And I was just some random guy on the end of a Fidelity. Like that guy called an 800 number and gets some 25-year-old who's like, "Don't do this."
Yeah.
Right. And he does that. Do you think that guy might have made a better decision had he had a financial advisor?
Absolutely. I do. That he trusted. He would have had to trust the advisor.
Well, and that's at the end of the day, I think one of the number one things you've got to, I think that's the most important thing we sell.
Yeah. But even like if you're not working with a financial advisor, stop obsessing about, what kind of investment you have, whether it had 10% performance over the past 10 years or whether it had 9%. You do not know how it's going to do over the next decade. Now, you need to pick a viable investment, and that's where if you don't know what a viable investment is, I don't know what to say other than go talk to a professional, because I know how to pick one, you know how to pick one. If you don't know how to pick one, that should be your sign you need a professional. If you don't know what that means, then that's my advice. If you do know what it means, stop obsessing about past performance. Stop obsessing about picking the number one investment and being at the edge of the return frontier every single year, because that's performance chasing. Almost all the time, performance chasing results in worse performance. Have you heard? You've heard of dogs of the Dow, right? Just the strategy of investing in last year's worst performer.
Yeah.
It actually outperforms on average the opposite strategy, which is
buying the best performer.
Yeah, buying the best performer. I'm not saying go in one or the other. I'm saying
the bottom line is control what you can control.
Control what you can control. Generally speaking, that means invest in a diversified fund. Whether it's an index fund or some proven growth fund or just general fund that's appropriate for you, that's actively managed. Doesn't matter. What matters is how much you're saving in your behaviors and whether or not you're capitulating when you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's what matters more than anything. It makes it bigger. We ran the numbers on it. You didn't want to get in the numbers, and I'm fine with that. But, we ran the numbers on a investment that you saved $1,000 a month into.
$1,000 a year.
$1,000 a year. Yeah, think $1,000 a year for 30 years, performing at 10% a year, and then we compared that to $2,000 a year that performed at 9% a year, and the latter one resulted in significantly more money. It was like six figures more money. You can run the math on your own, but it was like $112,000 difference. So saving more and managing your behavior matters more than investment fees, and also too, just because a financial advisor charges investment fees does not necessarily mean you're going to get worse performance. And a lot of times, because of behavioral controls and also what you like to call as accountability buddy,
sure.
Functioning as an accountability buddy. So we hold you accountable to, the decisions that you make. We act as a reinforcement layer. You typically get people who work with advisors that more regularly hit their goals. Because of consistent action.
Well, and I think because of visualization.
Yeah.
We talk about it. So anyway,
I know we got to move on. Number three. Number 3 is, this is a good one. It's going to be popular. Going to get a lot of clips out of this one. And that is the obsession boomers have right now. And everybody's going to have this eventually. But right now it's a boomer obsession with timing Social Security. Does that matter? Does it matter when you file Social Security? So I've got my opinions on this.
Let's hear it.
So I hear multiple reasons for filing at 62. Everybody that comes in, they want to claim their Social Security at age 62. And they give me one of two reasons.
Okay.
Reason number one is it's not going to be there. It's not going to be there. I heard that it's going...
The report every year that tells us it's running out sooner than we thought last year.
It's going to be out of money, and I'm not going to get my Social Security. I'm going to tell you right now, that is absolutely ridiculous. Social Security, I don't care what your politics are. It is a political weapon that politicians use. When one party's in power, the other one uses it against the other, and vice versa. That's the way it is. So when you got a Republican in charge, Democrats say they're going to kill Social Security, and then when you got a Democrat in charge, the Republicans say the same thing. It's weaponized. The reality is you got to think about think like a policymaker, think like a politician. If your election campaign relies on Social Security recipients coming up and voting for you, your benefits are not going to get cut. And you also got to think, what's easier for a policymaker to deficit spend, which is something they do habitually. You know, they're addicted to deficit spending. It spans both political parties. And by the way, it's not even political party. It's just human nature. Like, even if you had like some third political party in there, they would still do the same thing. They would deficit spend. We like to spend tomorrow's money. It's like, that's why the average household has a credit card balance. So it's easier to deficit spend than it is to go back to your constituents and say, those promises we made you, and you've been spending your entire life saving for retirement dependent on these promises. Yeah, sorry, it's not going to work out. You're going to get your Social Security. It's just a function of like, coming together at the fifth hour, these policymakers singing Kumbaya, holding hands, and then coming together with some emergency package they're going to pass, probably as an omnibus bill. There's probably going to be all sorts of pork attached to it, but it's going to rescue Social Security. So that is probably going to happen. Can I guarantee it? No, nobody can. But I think that's where the incentives are, and it's very reliable. So you choosing an irrevocable choice to file at 62 because you're afraid that the money's not going to be there for you is I would say the wrong decision. The second reason. I'm sorry, you got a comment on that?
I was just going to put some statistics to it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's a good time for it.
To your point, so I again, back to my Fidelity days, you talk to people about these retirement plans, and when you're taking phone calls at Fidelity, you're really talking to, on average, the average person. I mean, I was behind the company benefits. So if you had a 401k plan, you'd call in, we'd talk with you. Most people did not have multi-million-dollar balances, right? And so you're building retirement plans for people that are telling you they're spending $3,000 to $5,000 a month, even though it's probably wrong. The truth is, the vast majority of those people rely on Social Security, like rely on it for a large portion of their retirement. So there's a stat that came out of a survey conducted by the Senior Citizens League that I pulled up right here that says that 67% of the respondents to this survey said they depend on Social Security for more than half of their income.
Yeah.
So like 2/3 of people use this for the vast majority.
Yeah.
So 2/3 of retirees use this for the vast majority of their spending power. And you have to be really careful as a government, one, taking that money away from people, not just because they'll get angry, but because they are spending that money in the economy.
Yeah, because it'll be a guaranteed depression.
Yeah, so I agree. I guess my point is I agree with you that they're not going to be able to rip it away. I do think for a lot of the younger clients that we talk to, we try to manage. I don't know what whether they're going to have to take it later, whether they're going to get some reduced amount, whether they're going to pay more tax to get there. Like I don't know what the solution is, but I have a feeling for my 35-year-old clients that it's not going to look the way that it looks today, as compared to a 55-year-old client.
My crystal ball, which lies to me frequently, but what I think is more likely, the better question to ask isn't whether like the 35-year-old, 60-year-old, doesn't really matter, but it's more this question is more relevant to the younger crowd. It's not, am I going to get Social Security? It's going to be, what will my Social Security be worth?
Yeah.
Because ultimately what deficit spending is going to do, if that's the solution that I think is going to be the primary solution, there's going to be multiple solutions. One is going to be extending the retirement age. That happened back in 84. There's also going to be a solution like increasing the tax base. Right now, there's only Social Security tax on $186,000 of earned income. So theoretically, you could uncap that like Medicare is uncapped and then means test it. So there's a variety of solutions here, but I think the biggest lever that's going to be used, because it's just very expedient to use it, is deficit spending. And if that's the case, that's going to potentially coax inflation. So, your $1,200 a month benefit, before it would get you quite a bit, maybe it doesn't get you so much anymore. It's a way to mask the irresponsibility, the fiscal irresponsibility. So can I move on to the second thing, which is a very simple thing. It's, Ben, I want to retire early. It's like, okay, so why do you have to file Social Security at 62 then? Just because you're retiring early, you got these other savings over here. Just because you retire early doesn't mean you should accept a permanent 30% discount on your Social Security. Run the numbers. Does it make? Generally speaking, the longer you live, the longer your longevity, the more it makes sense for you to file later.
Well, I'll put some numbers to that. Yeah. So when I run, because we run Social Security analyses for our clients, so oftentimes with clients that are getting into their early 60s, we're starting to look at, well, what exactly are your Social Security amounts and what might the strategy be to claim that? And regularly we'll look at, okay, well, how much better is it if you wait versus not? And when's the crossover? Like when does it, how old do you have to be before that delay had made sense? And most of the time, the break-even age is between 79 and 81. You basically have to live till about 80 to make delaying Social Security make sense. So I guess I'm going to take a slightly different approach to you. I think there's a lot of people that stress about delaying Social Security that maybe don't need to stress so much about it. Like maybe they're a little too focused on how to optimize the Social Security and not focused as much on how do they optimize their life. And I think that it can be hard because, if you retire at 62, and let's say you delay your Social Security till 70, those can be some of the best, the healthiest years of the rest of your life, right? And so there's two sides of me on this. On one side, I say, realistically, I've looked at the numbers. It doesn't, all else equal, assuming you're single, whatever, you're not getting that much more money over the course of your lifetime to delay it. And you might be giving up some things. You might not have the resources to be able to retire at 62 or whatever it is. And so you do have to think about not how to optimize for the cash flow statement, but how to optimize for your life. I will add, though, there is one very common misconception that I see here where you do want to pay more attention to delaying. And that is, this is what happens is I will oftentimes get, I'll pick on the husband, but it's not exclusive to husbands, I guess. A lot of times husband will come in and say, well, I want to take my Social Security at 62. And let's say that person, well, it's not about husband or wife. Which
well, it is. If it is, because you're talking about spousal benefits.
Well, if there's a married couple.
Yeah.
Normally what happens is one of the two of them has a higher Social Security than the other.
Yeah.
And over the course of retirement, unfortunately, we all pass away at some point. Most of the time, it doesn't happen together. So when one spouse eventually dies, the surviving spouse keeps the higher of the two Social Security payments. So the effect that's created by this is that the person that has the higher Social Security benefit, really what they think they're asking is, oh, well, if I delay it, I have to wait until 80 years old to make it make sense. Well, what I really need to be asking is, do I think one of us might live till 80? Because that higher payment sticks around until the second person
Yeah, because he is making
away.
that decision not for just himself. I'm still picking on the husband here. Not just for himself, but for both.
Right. And
his wife.
And so the converse of that is, well, let's say the other spouse has a smaller Social Security payout. Maybe we're not as worried about their timing. Maybe we just take it at 62 if they want to take it at 62.
Yeah. I think a good way to summarize this is that there's times that you should be concerned about Social Security timing, but generally, if you're gravitating towards both filing early as possible just because, that's what you heard online, or you're filing as late as possible just because that's what you heard. Maybe that's not the best decision. So there's quality of life factors that need to be considered as well. And ultimately, here's my point. When it comes to filing Social Security, you don't know until the fat lady sinks. You literally don't know if you made the right choice until you're dead.
But I will say that if I had a client that needed Social Security to retire, and it forced us to make the decision in a less than optimal way, but it made a material difference in their retirement and their life, 100%.
Yeah, like if they weren't, for example, if they weren't stressing about their monthly deposits. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, these dollars are really only here to provide, a life for us. And if we're so focused on optimizing the dollars that we forget to live the life, it's like
that's the perfect segue into our fourth and final point, and that is getting obsessed about a retirement number versus the retirement lifestyle. So unpack that. I'm going to let you unpack that.
The easiest way that I can kind of introduce this topic is whenever any of us as advisors talk to clients, you'll ask them, when do they want to retire? Seemingly people know when they want to retire. Mm-hmm. Like they kind of know they want to retire at 62 or retire at 65 or retire at 67. Like they have an opinion at very least. What I find is harder is like I kind of know what they don't want to do. Right? Like if you tell me, I've been working for 25 years, I've been doing the same thing, I really want to be done in the next 5 or 7 years or whatever. Like I know what you don't want to do. What I don't know is what you do want to do. And I just think if people got a little clearer on what they want to do with their time, they might find that they could build a plan that actually makes them happier. Mm-hmm. A great example of this is like I was just this past week, I was talking with a guy, he's in his mid 30s. He's making great money. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, big job. And he is so stressed about his spending because to him, he could get laid off at any minute. And he always needs to be, he needs to get himself closer to being able to like fully not work. Mm-hmm. Right. And you tell me, like, how many 40-year-olds do you know that are making $300,000 to $500,000 a year at some job that then lose that job and never make a penny for the rest of their life?
That's pretty rare. Yeah.
And so it's like, I kind of asked him, I said, well, what are you good at? He says, well, I know how to, he works at like a hospital. So he's like, well, I know how to, manage the different doctors and all this different. I said, well, do you think that, if you were to not be working doing what you could do, you could consult? Like, do you like what you do? He says, oh yeah, I like what I do. I just don't like being on the hospital schedule. And so if you start to unpack like where people want to spend their time, a lot of times there are ways to merge the ideas of, not doing what they're doing today, but doing something a little different that doesn't come along with zero income. Mm-hmm. Right? This is a great. I have a friend, another friend. This is a story. This guy was an engineer. We might bring him on the podcast at some point. He was an engineer. Was making over $100,000 a year as an engineer. Saved all sorts of money, and at 32, he retired from engineering. And he was like part of the FIRE community, financially independent, retire early. Mm-hmm. And I talked to this guy a lot. And one of the things that I asked is like, how did that go? And he says, well, I got bored really fast. Yeah. And so he and I both coalesce around the concept of like, I stole this, but from a guy named Cody Garrett, but it's financially independent. It's still FIRE the acronym, but it's financially independent recreational employment. Right. And I think that like I'm going to do a financial plan later today for somebody that wants to retire at 58 years old and they're making $150,000 a year today and they don't want to do what they're doing today, but they are interested in working or doing something with their time that produces some money. And the difference of making their financial plan work or not is them making like $40,000 a year doing something. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of this, like what you sounded, this is great. I know who you're talking about, and it's a great story. But it's also, it can be difficult for some people to relate because it's very ethereal. It's like, don't focus on the number. Focus on what you want to be when you grow up. It's like it's a very intimidating question to ask a lot of people. Retirement is it's in a lot of ways it's like a crisis that people are approaching. And you see this. There's like grieving stages in retirement. Now, not everybody has these grieving stages. I've got one client in particular that they are missional about retirement. They know exactly what they want to do. She's really excited because she's enrolling in college. We've been funding a 529 plan that she's going to use. Think about that. You usually use 529 plans for your kids. She was using one for herself because she's going back to school. She's going to learn how to paint. She's going to be an artist. So, there's that level of client where like, what you want to do. And then there's the other client that's so busy because they're working 80 hours a week, turning wrenches or whatever it is that they're doing, that they don't have time. Like they're at home taking their socks off, just like, oh, thank God my feet can breathe again. They don't have time to think about like what they want to be when they grow up. So, what I like to say is, don't be so focused on the number. Fidelity had this campaign where people were walking around with their number. You remember that? What's your number campaign?
Yeah.
I hated this campaign. It's like, one guy was walking around with like $2 million. Like, that's my number. That's my target. Once I get there, man, it's all, it's all gravy. Don't be so obsessed about that. Do the best that you can. So focus on what you're saving today and what's possible for you to save today. I have one guy that told me that he queried ChatGPT. This happened like a couple weeks ago. He queried ChatGPT, said, how much money do I need to retire on? ChatGPT told him $2.5 million. And I looked at him, we'll just say his name is John. I said, John, if you had $2.5 million, you could retire today. Like, here's how the maths, And so don't get so obsessed about the end number. What you want to first define is what is your retirement going to look like? Can you actually retire? Do you really want to retire? I loved your acronym, the financially independent, recreationally employed.
Yeah,
that's the first time I heard that. That is awesome. And I think that a lot of people find out when they retire that that's really what they want. They don't want to stop working. They don't want to stop being relevant. They really just want to stop working and to serve this one end goal.
Well, I'll go back to my Fidelity phone call where I ask about how much money somebody thinks they spend, and they tell me $3,000 to $5,000 a month. I don't know what you're doing on a monthly basis to only spend $3,000 to $5,000 a month in retirement, but it's probably not a lot.
Yeah.
And you go from having a job that fills 40 plus hours of your work week to having like nothing to do every day's a weekend. Like, close your eyes for a minute and live a week of your life with no job to do. Obviously it's the idea of not having a boss to answer to. All that stuff is great, but very quickly, if you're not careful, you can lose a sense of purpose, and you can really, it can be a bad thing.
It can be an existential crisis. So I think if I could sum it up, it's don't work to feed the financial beast, because I feel like a lot of people work 9 to 5. Dave Ramsey says, don't work for Friday. And I think this is what he means. He says, don't just work for the paycheck. Don't just work for the financial goal. Work for the sake of the quality, the purpose of the work. And when you do finally hit your financial independence number, sometimes, there are people out there that need to be garbage men. I doubt there's many. The guy that comes in, takes my garbage every week, I doubt he's like having a blast. It's like, oh, this is super meaningful.
Yeah.
He's working probably for Friday, but eventually when you get to that financial independence threshold, which I guess in and of itself is a number, but don't obsess about it. When you hit there, try to find something that you're doing for the sake of the quality of the work.
Well, and I'm not even saying that. I mean, when I say it's not just a number, I mean, there's plenty of people who, to be honest, I can build you a retirement. If you only spend $3,000 to $5,000 a month, I can build you a retirement plan that lets you retire pretty soon.
It's not difficult.
But like, what happens if, like, I build you this great plan that says you can retire and spend $3,000 to $5,000 a month. And you're going to be able to, by the way, just fund that just with your Social Security. And your $1 million portfolio is going to keep growing all the way through. And then you do it. And then you find out you are wrong. and what if you haven't saved enough? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the other thing is, figuring out the number has a lot more to do with what you actually want to do with that time than what your spending might look like today, because your whole life is going to look a little different in retirement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and nobody can predict their future with any sort of clarity. So those are our 4 things that we wanted to talk about today. So again, just to recap, budgeting every dollar instead of paying yourself first. So, stop obsessing about, accounting for every penny. It's just frustrating to do that. Behaviors matter more than fees or investment performance. Don't obsess over getting your Social Security decision perfect. That is difficult to do because it requires you to predict the future. And then finally, don't obsess over your retirement number. By retirement number, I think you and I agree that just basically means some dollar amount in your bank account, right?
Yeah, spend more time thinking about what you actually want.
Bingo. All right, so with that, let's talk about the tip of the day. We labored over this one. Yeah, we labored over this one.
But I won't mention what you wanted to make the tip of the day.
No, you'll have to stay tuned and find out later. It might come up in a different episode. But what we were talking about, as we do, we like to go over consumer reports, what to buy. By the time this comes out, it'll be August, and what to buy for August actually is computers, printers, and tablets. So basically, compute. This is a good time of year to buy that. And in the spirit of that, we're also sending our kids back to school. So, one thing to do, don't just go and load up your Amazon cart and hit the checkout. You want to pay attention to whether or not your state offers a tax holiday. So I'll put this link in the show notes. This is a USA Today article, and it actually summarizes a lot of states. So we've got Alabama, Arkansas, Connecticut, Florida, Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Missouri, New Mexico, New York, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia. So if you heard any of your state in that list, that means you have a tax holiday coming up, and you need to click on this link and find out when can you purchase your kids back to school supplies without a state sales tax. So we're gonna go up to Ohio, for example. Ohio just happens to be where you and I live. So August 7th through 9th is when you can buy supplies. So here's what's tax-free: clothing valued at $75 or less per item, so it can accumulate.
Sure.
School supplies at $20 or less per item, which is frankly most school supplies. I don't know how much Elmer's glue is these days, but I don't think it's more than $20. And then school instructional materials, $20 or less. You know what items should be on here is instruments. Yeah. Like, come on, stop being cheap. Like, you know how expensive instruments are?
I had a trumpet. I had a client buy a flute that cost tens of thousands of dollars one time.
It's insane how much this stuff costs.
I didn't realize you could get flutes that were that expensive.
What made me think of this is we're right down the road from a high school, and they were practicing their marching band, and I was just like, I wonder how much money is in instruments.
I think you can rent them. A lot of people rent them.
But there you go. That's your tip of the day.
Regardless, I guess that what I would do if I'm trying to work smarter, not harder, with this tip of the week or tip of the day, whatever the heck we call it, I would go as I'm building my back to school shopping list, and I'd just throw things in a shopping cart on Amazon or Target or Walmart, wherever you shop, and then mark your calendar with whatever this, in Ohio, it's August 7th to 9th, and just go in and place the order on those days. Some of these were pretty juicy. On one of these, you could buy a computer.
Alabama, you could buy a computer up to almost $1,200 or less per item.
Yeah, so there's some pretty good stuff in here.
You basically just go to Micro Center and say, hey, can I do this in 2 transactions?
But clothes, I'll say clothes are no joke. I have kids, you have kids. They grow so fast. And kids' clothes are not, for how much material is used relative to my clothes, they're not priced appropriately.
No, I agree. It's a big money, and they sell so much volume. It's a big money maker. But just make sure to tell Junior whatever shirt or pants you pick out, it's got to be it's less than $75 if you live in Ohio. So, all right. Well, I think with that we close it up. I really thank everybody for listening this long, and I guess like and subscribe, because we're trying to grow this channel. Our numbers are actually going up. We're trending higher and higher, but we could use your support. So if you liked what you saw and you know anybody that could use this information, please don't hesitate to share. We appreciate it.
And if you do have any questions, I'll just say that we've got this content going out on multiple platforms and whatnot. It's hard to keep up with all of the comments. So we do have a website that you can find in the show notes that is specifically for the purpose of submitting any questions that you might have or feedback that you have. If you submit your feedback or questions through that site, we will get it as an email, and we'll do everything that we can to get back to you.
Catch you next time.
Opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Advisory services offered through National Wealth Management Group, LLC.